There's a specific moment when you walk into your bank and the teller stops calling you sir out of policy and starts calling you by your name out of interest. Same you. Same haircut, same wrinkled shirt, same terrible parallel parking job out front. The only thing that changed is a number on a screen they can see and you can feel. Here's the thing, nobody tells you about building wealth. The money itself is almost boring. What's wild is watching the world rearrange itself around you as you cross certain invisible lines. Family you haven't heard from in years, banks that wouldn't return your call now, assigning you a personal human being, strangers deciding you must be smart just because you look like you have money. This isn't a video about getting rich, it's about the 3 net worth levels where people, institutions, and even your family start treating you like a completely different person. And a 4th thing nobody warns you about. The reason none of them ever feels like enough. The lines are closer than you think. My name is Nick, and I spend a genuinely unreasonable amount of time thinking about money and why people behave the way they do around it. If you've ever felt like the world runs on a set of rules nobody handed you, subscribe and hit that like button because today we're mapping out exactly where those rules change and which level is secretly a trap. Quick thing first, I'm not a financial advisor and this isn't financial advice. These are just patterns I've watched play out over and over. And the first one messes with people the most, so let me show you where you actually stand right now because I promise it's not where you think. Here's a number that should bother you. The median net worth of an American household is about $192,900. That's the middle. Half of all families have less than that. But the average is roughly $1,063,700. Read those two again. The average is more than 5 times the median. How is that even possible? Because a tiny group at the very top is so absurdly wealthy that they yank the average upward like a kid hanging off a curtain rod. So when you hear the average American has over $1 million, your brain goes, well, I'm clearly failing. When the truth is, the average is a fairy tale and the median is the actual story. Most people are nowhere near $1 million. Most people, in fact, are one transmission failure away from a very bad month. So that's the map. Now let's climb it. The first line you cross, the first place things genuinely shift happens at a number that's going to sound almost insultingly small once you see what it actually does. $100,000. I know. $100,000 isn't a yacht. It's barely a down payment in some cities, but there's a reason Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's late business partner, one of the sharpest financial minds who ever lived, said this, and I'm quoting him directly, the first $100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it. I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas a little bit. Why would a billionaire obsess over a number that to him was a rounding error? Because of what happens after you hit it. Let me show you the math, because I think it genuinely changes how people see their whole financial life. Money doubles on a schedule, and that schedule depends only on your rate of return, not on how much you already have. There's a shortcut called the rule of 72. Take 72, divide it by your annual return, and that's roughly how many years your money takes to double. At a 7% return, and a pretty standard long-term market assumption after inflation, your money doubles about every 10 years, simple enough. Here's where it gets good, and by good, I mean slightly cruel. That 10-year doubling time is identical whether you've got $100 or $100 million, but the dollars it spits out are not. $100,000 at 7% earns you about $7,000 in a year. Fine, a decent used car, but $1 million at that same 7% earns about $70,000 a year, more than the median American makes at a full-time job for doing absolutely nothing, and $5 million earns about $350,000 a year while you sleep, while you're on vacation, while you're losing an argument in a comment section. You see it? The percentage is the same. The effort is the same boulder, same hill. The only thing that changed is the size of the snowball. That's exactly why the first $100,000 feels like pushing a car uphill in the rain, and the second $1 million feels like the universe is just handing you money. The early grind isn't slow. because you're doing it wrong. It's slow because the snowball is still small. Munger wasn't being dramatic, he was being precise. And here's what crossing that line does to how the world treats you, which at this level is almost nothing. And that's the whole point. 100,000 in real savings quietly drops you out of a club most Americans can't leave. Depending on how you measure it, somewhere between a quarter and well over half of US households are living paycheck to paycheck. And get this, even among people earning over $100,000 a year, around 44% say they've got little or nothing left after the monthly bills. So crossing into actual liquid breathing room money statistically yanks you out of the most financially fragile group in the country. The institutions notice too, just barely. This is the level where a bank like Bank of America starts changing your actual pricing once you hit $100,000 with them. Better card rewards, a discount on your auto loan, money knocked off a mortgage. They're not rolling out a red carpet yet. They've just unlocked a slightly nicer waiting room, but it's the first time the machine looks at your number and decides you're worth being a little nicer too. So who's treating you differently at level 1? Honestly, mostly math and you. Nobody throws you a party at 100 grand. The only thing that changed is that compounding has officially flipped from working against you to working for you. Quick honesty check, by the way. Munger said that back in the 90s and 100 grand then is worth closer to 200 today, so if you want his finish line in modern money, aim for 200. But the principle is bulletproof. Get the snowball rolling, because the next line is where other people finally enter the chat. Think back to the first time a bank actually treated you like you mattered, or more likely the first time one pointedly didn't. The loan officer who barely looked up will let you know that everyone in the room understood meant no. Now picture the exact opposite of that being your normal. Because the second line, $1 million, is where the opposite becomes the default. But first, the complicated truth about a million, because it is not the number your grandparents think it is. Using the 4% rule, the idea from planner Bill Bengen that you can pull about 4% of your portfolio a year and have it last roughly 30. $1 million generates about $40,000 a year, forever-ish. And $40,000 a year for doing nothing is wonderful. But notice what it is and what it isn't. It's comfortable. It is not a private jet. A millionaire today never has to panic about a car repair again. They are not, however, lighting cigars with $100 bills. Here's the reframe every single person chasing that number needs tattooed somewhere visible. $1 million in 1990 has the buying power of about $2.5 million today. So when your parents talk about millionaires like they were gods walking the earth, they're not crazy. In their dollars, a millionaire really was rich. The word got famous in an era when it meant something that now takes $2.5 million to match. The bar moved, the word didn't. Even UBS, the giant Swiss bank that counts these people for a living, and there are about 23.8 million millionaires in the US now, with over 1,000 brand new ones minted every single day. Basically came out and admitted the $1 million threshold is, and I'm quoting them, a bit outdated. When the bankers are telling you $1 million isn't what it used to be, believe them. But socially, institutionally, this is where the treatment changes for real. And the fascinating part is almost none of it is visible from the outside. Around this tier, banks stop treating you like an account number and start assigning you an actual human being. At Chase, once you've got about $150,000 with them, you become a private client, a dedicated advisor, fees waived away like they were never real, no fee wires, ATM fees refunded anywhere on earth, invitations to events you didn't know existed. Congratulations, you've been upgraded from account number to person we would be genuinely sad to lose. There's a difference, and it's worth a few grand a year in fees you will never see again. But here's the part that genuinely rewired how I understand wealth. The rich don't get rich and then spend their money. They get rich and then borrow against their money so they never have to sell it. It's a thing called a securities-backed line of credit. Say you own a big pile of stocks. Instead of selling them, which triggers taxes and stops your compounding cold, you go to the bank and say, lend me money against these, and the bank says, Absolutely, here's a low rate, and we won't even check your credit because the portfolio is the collateral. It's like getting to spend your savings without spending your savings. Financial Schrodinger's cat, except the cat is always alive and the cat is rich. We're talking interest rates of a few percent, while you and I are out here staring at 12 to 16% on a credit card. JP Morgan literally uses this exact example in its own marketing. Say you've got a $10 million portfolio and you need $3 million in cash. If you sell $3 million in stock, the $7 million you've got left grows into about $483,000 of gains in a year. But if you borrow the $3 million instead and leave all $10 million invested, that full amount grows into about $690,000. And even after paying $58,000 in interest, you come out roughly $148,000 ahead. That's 31% more money for the simple crime of being wealthy enough to borrow instead of sell. This right here is the entire game at the top. Buy assets, borrow against them, never sell, repeat. The system has a VIP lane, and the toll to enter it is having so much money you don't actually need the lane. Quick gut check before we climb higher. Pause this for 1 second and actually picture your own number. Everything you own minus everything you owe. Got it? Hold on to it, because where you land changes everything about the next level. And most people guess way, way too high. The strange truth of level 2 is that the shift is almost entirely silent. A typical millionaire is mostly home equity and a 401k invisible at the grocery store. The cashier does not care. The different treatment all happens behind closed doors, at loan desks and advisor offices in rooms most people never walk into. The world doesn't treat you like royalty at $1 million. It just quietly stops charging you the poor person tax. And if that sounds anticlimactic, hold on. Because the third level is where this gets genuinely psychologically weird. Forget the number for a second, because you already know the feeling this level is about. You've fantasized about it. It's the moment your boss says something unreasonable, and instead of swallowing it, you get to lean back and think, I do not actually need this job. That's it. That's the whole thing. The third line, somewhere between $5 and $10 million, has an unofficial, slightly profane nickname that I'll politely call freedom money. And the power of it isn't quitting. It's that everyone around you can sense you could. Run the math and you'll see why this is the line. $5 million at that same 4% generates about $200,000 a year without you lifting a finger. For most households, that's not retire someday. That's work is optional today, permanently. And the thing nobody warns you about is how that changes the way people treat you while you stay. You negotiate from total calm. You can't be pressured, can't be leveraged, can't be scared with the threat of a layoff. And weirdly, that earns you more respect, not less. Nothing turns a room toward you like the quiet confidence of someone who genuinely needs nothing from it. This is also where the financial system rolls out the actual red carpet, the velvet rope, invitation-only stuff. The real JP Morgan private bank wants a minimum of $10 million in investable assets. Goldman Sachs's private wealth arm is right around the same, with a median client account near $55 million. And if you want to feel genuinely small, there are firms with an ultra tier built for families worth $200 million and up. There is somewhere an entire team of brilliant professionals whose only job is managing money for people richer than your whole town. You will never meet them. They are not for you. I just think you should know the room exists. Only about 1.6% of American households even crack 10 million, so if you get here, you are statistically a rounding error in the best possible way. But now I have to tell you about the dark side of level 3. Because this is the part the gurus posing next to rented Lamborghinis will never mention. At this level, people start treating you differently, and not all of it is good. There's an actual clinical term for what happens to people who come into serious money fast. It's called sudden wealth syndrome, guilt, paranoia, isolation, a strange decision, paralysis. And one of its best documented symptoms is that the second word gets out, people materialize. Old friends who suddenly remember your birthday, a cousin you last saw at a funeral in 2014 who now has a can't miss opportunity in vending machines. Salesmen, advisors, charities, all deluging you the instant they smell it. The phrase people use is that the relatives come out of the woodwork, and anyone who's lived even a tiny version of it knows exactly how that feels. We've actually got a natural experiment for this, and it's lottery winners. A study of thousands of Florida winners found that a windfall of 50 to 150 grand didn't save people from bankruptcy. It just delayed it. They went broke within a few years at the same rate, sometimes a higher rate, as people who won almost nothing. And the money didn't fix the math of their lives. It just bought a longer runway before the same crash. You've heard the same cautionary tales about pro athletes. Those exact numbers are honestly disputed, so I won't pretend they're gospel, but the underlying pattern is rock solid. A huge pile of money dropped onto a life that wasn't built to hold it tends to leak right out the bottom. And then there's the part that has nothing to do with money at all. Resentment. Psychologists sometimes call it crab bucket mentality. Put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, and any crab that tries to climb out gets dragged right back down by the others. Not out of malice exactly, like just instinct. And people do this too. The moment you visibly start winning, some of the folks closest to you will, often without even realizing it, try to pull you back to where they are because your rise quietly indicts their standing still. It shows up everywhere across cultures, like Hoix. The Japanese say the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So you end up in this lonely paradox. The same wealth that earns you respect from strangers can cost you ease with the people who knew you before. Financial freedom sometimes shows up holding hands with the loss of your freedom to fully trust anyone. Which brings me to that fourth thing I promised you. The reason none of these levels ever feels like enough. You'd think that somewhere up this ladder there's a step marked enough, where you finally exhale. There isn't, because the bar runs with you. Charles Schwab surveys Americans every year on what net worth makes a person wealthy, and the number just keeps climbing. Recently, it was about $2.5 million. The person with $1 million looks up at the person with 2.5 and feels poor. The one with 2.5 looks at the 10 and feels poor. The goalposts don't just move. They sprint away from you at the exact speed you approach them. Your brain adjusts to every new level in about a month, then quietly demands the next one. That's the trap sitting underneath all three levels, the one nobody escapes by accident. So let me hand you something better than a number to chase. The point of seeing these levels clearly isn't to make you feel behind, it's the opposite. It's to let you watch the machine actually work, charging the rich less and the rest of us more, so you can stop measuring your entire worth against lines that were never built to make you feel like you'd arrived. The first 100 grand is the realest, the hardest, and the one almost entirely within your control. Obsess over that one. Everything after it is mostly the system being the system. And now you can see it happening instead of just feeling vaguely cheated by it. Here's the truth I'd want a friend to tell me. The people who actually win this game aren't the ones who climb the fastest. They're the ones who decide on purpose what enough means for them, before the moving goalposts get to decide it for them. You can cross every one of these lines and still be miserable. You can also sit comfortably between them and build a life that the strangers, the bankers, and the crabs in the bucket can't touch. Pick your number. Make it yours. And this is the genuinely radical part, actually stop when you reach it. And that teller from the very beginning, the one who learns your name, here's the secret nobody says out loud. They were never really reacting to you. They were reacting to the number on the screen. The entire trick to this whole thing is making sure you never make that same mistake about yourself. If this gave you a new way to see where you stand, do me a favor and subscribe, because the next thing we're breaking down is the financial trap that hits the moment your net worth starts to grow, the one that quietly eats the gains you worked so hard for. I'll see you in that one.